Welcome back to Elder Sign, a weird fiction podcast by Clay Temple Media. My name is Glenn McDorman.
And I'm Brandon Buddha. This episode, we are continuing our coverage of the Robert W. Chambers novella, The Repairer of Reputations. We'll be discussing a lot of what we found in the story, which we recapped in our last episode.
We want to thank everyone who participated in our Patreon vote to choose our next batch of stories. We're going to report back on the results in a few episodes, but you can also find them listed on the show's webpage at claytemplemedia.com.
If you feel bad because you missed out on voting, don't worry. We're going to be doing another vote in just 2 months. And really, Glenn, I just want to echo your thanks to our patrons for their support. It's great for us to know that people are listening to us and participating in really what is a labor of love for both of us. But I think we have a lot to discuss about the Repair of Reputation. So, Glenn, why don't we get started on the discussion of this story?
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about here. For me, the real elephant in the room of this story is the world, the speculative world that Chambers has built. What's going on with this long preamble to getting to the actual story. But I'm going to push all of that to be the second half of our discussion. And I want to start by talking about the plot of the story and really the madness here and the question of what's real and what isn't, and the role of the play, The King in Yellow, and the idea of theater in this story. So the first question that I have for you, Brandon, to really kick this off is, how real is this supernatural stuff that is happening here in the story? All this business with Carcosa and Hester and the King in Yellow.
I think we have to look at the character Vance to get a real sense of what is real and what is not in relation to the King in Yellow, the play, what the play does to people. Vance is, of course, the character who is brought out at the end of the story to commit murder, to execute the writ of execution signed by Hildred Rex to kill Hawberk, Constance, and Louis. Vance is distraught in part because he is a person who is insane, just like Mr. Wilde and just like Hildred, or people who have been committed to an asylum at some point in their life. Vance has had this intense reaction to having read the play The King in Yellow, and is cured finally in the asylum of whatever havoc reading The King in Yellow had on his mind. But then he's pulled back into the world of Carcosa when he visits Mr. Wilde to have his reputation repaired. Vance is also a criminal. He's a fraud, he's a counterfeit, and he's a thief. So I think we're meant as a reader to get a sense that this play is genuinely disruptive to the mental well-being of those who read it. Something about the reality effect of the play causes people who maybe are already on the verge of going mad to tip over into full madness. And so I think that if you look at Vance as a character who's kind of outside of the mind of Hildred and compare that to Hildred's own mind, who Hildred had read this while he was either in the asylum, in the private asylum of Dr. Archer, or recently released and read this while he was healing from his injuries, that this play does have some supernatural effect on those who read it. As I alluded to in our recap, the idea of there being a king or an imperial dynasty or an imperial dynastic history of American rulers seems like an idea that would not take root in America, especially the America we find in this story. And so it's hard for me to believe that this play does anything other than cause madness in those who might already be nearly mad. So I don't think the King in Yellow is a real figure or Carcosa is a real planet, and that emperors in the past have served the King in Yellow, but it's more like a stand-in for maybe some kind of demonic influence in history or an evil influence in history. It certainly has an evil influence on Hildred.
I want to follow up with this stuff about the play a little bit later. I want to start maybe a little more small scale. So it seems to me, Brandon, that you don't believe one bit that the Castains somehow really are, even if it's unbeknownst to themselves, you don't believe that they are in any way the rightful monarchs of America or the agents of the King in Yellow. Is that fair to say?
Yes to the first part. I do not believe that there is at all secret history of rulers in America that the Castains are going to be the lead of, and they're going to return to their rightful crown. Do I believe that Hildred is serving the King in Yellow? Yes, and I think he's doing that whether or not the King in Yellow is a real figure at all. Hildred believes enough